virtue of good faith and being able to sit at the table and work together on the port future study, I think is critical. There are short-term issues here, but we're talking about how that port develops in the next 10, 20, 30, 40 or 50 years. And if we can get the port in that port future study, get a reasonable compromise going forward in terms of port development, with by and large parties not getting everything they want, but by and large what is appropriate to move forward on, to actually get ourselves into a situation where we can spend that year of valuable time resetting the port's culture and resetting how we will deal with the port going forward, then, councillors, I would have thought that this would present as an excellent, appropriate midway forward. There are times in this chair when I've watched some of our debates and have sort of, not debates here necessarily in the chamber, but around Auckland, and have felt that we've lacked maturity. And, I sort of refer to it as old Auckland, where we are overly divisive and end up, rather than discussing a matter around a table, shouting at each other across the front page as the local fish and chip wrapper, or on the front page, or on TV. And what I'm suggesting here, what I see this as being a way forward for us to deal with this issue with maturity, the best information we can get, and to encourage the port into a much more inclusive and therefore beneficial and understanding way forward for a company that is 100% owned by the public, but seems to have rather used that public ownership as a shield, and it cannot be any longer. I want them in the room around the table for us to work out their future together. Now, I think that's a high hope, but not an idealistic hope. So this is the way that I think, and I want to acknowledge Steve and Mike and the team have worked really hard on this. This is not perfect. It doesn't satisfy some of you. It's not what all of you want necessarily, or all of what the port wants, or what some of the people out there want. But I think it's a midway forward. Okay, let's go.
Question,
Chris. Councillor Chris.
So at 2:10 we got this letter dated today and this motion.
Yes.
Was none of this information available to us to make a decision at 2:30 available earlier? Was none of this?
I think it's come in as quickly as it can. I mean, we've only been able to address this, Chris, as we are able to in terms of timing. So, Councillor Chris, the letter only arrived in. We had a fairly good indication as to what was going to be the position. That's pretty much what's come to us.
We have a motion that's sponsored by yourself and the Deputy Mayor, and clearly this has been worked up, and both, at least the Mayor and Deputy Mayor, are fully aware of the wording, and I don't know about others, but I'm not. And there's no other report accompanying this decision.
Yeah, well,
just noted your comment that you want the best information we can get to make our decisions, and this is an important decision. So where is the best information we can get to make this decision?
Well, we've been having briefings and discussions have been going on. So, I think that what we've got before us is about as good as we can get at this point in time. What the choices here for you are to continue to try and delay, or to actually take the information that you've got and respond accordingly and get things moving. I think that the community are probably looking for some leadership in this, and so with the information that I got, I'm confident enough to lead with this.
They surely are looking for leadership, Mr. Mayor. Can I just ask, 4 weeks ago to the day, we passed a unanimous resolution requesting that the Mayor, Chief Executive and Mr. Swift continue to do everything within their powers to encourage the ports of Auckland, etc. I think you know the rest.
Yep.
You're not proposing to revoke that motion?
Look, this is a motion to respond on that, and I've done everything in my powers, and this is where we're at.
So you're not proposing to revoke that motion?
I don't have to. This is basically the response to the Ports of Auckland's reply to us, and so I'm proposing this as a response. We were doing everything that we could do, and we've arrived at this position, and I'm proposing this as a position for us to move on from.
So can we have some support here from our democracy advisor? The last time we visited this issue at the Auckland Development Committee, we were required to revoke the earlier motion about the port future study, previously referred to as something else, of course, to allow ourselves to be in a position to support something that was contrary to the name and timing of that study.
Yeah, look, this is not contrary. What this is, I mean, the heart of that was, here's our position, this is what we'd like to achieve. We haven't been able to achieve that.
Well, I'm asking Democracy Services for advice.
Right, is there
referring to the standing order.
Am I missing something here? Is there something more that I should do?
No.
No, I need to review the wording before giving you advice, but my understanding is it's not contradictory.
This is a follow-through action consistent with that resolution.
Yep.
I wouldn't recommend you revoke it because, process and conversations will continue with a range of parties because we're not in control of what some other parties might do in this dispute. It would be inappropriate to revoke that resolution on the books at the moment.
Do you want me, as the chair of Auckland Development Committee, the reason for the revocation of that previous recommendation has nothing to do with this one. We had passed a recommendation saying we wouldn't commence the future port study until the unitary plan was completed. We were required to revoke that recommendation because we wanted to start it sooner. So that was an action requiring our staff to do something. We were going back and asking them to do something completely different, hence the revocation.
Okay. Councillor Chris? If.
A question which I suppose I was going to ask the same one that Chris has, but a question of you, sir, in terms of the way you intend sharing this today, for those of us who believe that there may be further actions that the council could take, that would be consistent with the resolution that was passed a few weeks ago. If we were wanting to restate or to expand upon that position, will you rule that as a direct negative? I really just want the comfort of knowing that we're going into this debate today where there is the opportunity for all parties to express themselves as fully as possible in the interests of leadership from Auckland.
Councillor Chris, if you have any further suggestions in terms of how we might go into this matter in the future, I'll welcome those. I haven't heard them thus far, but I'd welcome them at this time, and it may well be that they will add to the discussion. But what has been proposed here is we asked for a response, we got that response, it's been formalised, and now we're responding back in terms of a way forward, and that is the primary recommendation. But if there are other things that you think we should be doing as a consequence of that recommendation, I'm happy to hear them.
So I can take comfort then, as we go into this debate, that you are not going to arbitrarily rule out any possible amendment that may come from any number of us here.
Councillor Chris, that's silly. Of course I might. I'm the chair, and if you were sitting in the same spot, you'd never ever give that undertaking, because someone might decide that they'd like to move a recommendation that's completely contrary, or move an amendment. So, but what I am interested in is if there's something that you want to, propose, as an addition to or as an amendment, then I'm listening. But I can't give you an undertaking about it. Okay, Councillor Mike.
I'll foreshadow an amendment, Mr Mayor, and that would be along the lines to request ACIL to remove Mr Hawkins from that role. But before I do that, I just want to ask a question. I thought I heard Michael say that unless Ports of Auckland can build this new extension, B2, the Queen Mary, the ship Queen Mary, will not be coming here again. Did Ports of Auckland tell you that?
Councillor, if I can clarify that, Ports of Auckland have told us unless they can build the extended facilities or there are alternative facilities provided, they won't be able to accept the longer cruise ships, with the exception of their undertaking for Queen Mary 2. So they can take Queen Mary 2.
Thank you.
Okay.
So there's not too many bigger than the Queen Mary, and we've been taking the Queen Mary since it was launched and came here in 2008. And I have to say, I'm a little bit confused really. Are Ports of Auckland seriously considering putting cruise ships in the second busiest container terminal in New Zealand? I don't think so. Mr. Mayor, games are being played here. The simple fact is this council authorised a formal letter to ACIL. The initial response was insubordinate. The response we've got here is really saying, or do half of what we want. But that's not what we asked. We wanted a pause, a halt, until, firstly, the legal proceedings are completed, and secondly, the port study. There is no real urgency to get this work done to cater for unbuilt longer ships. There are no container ships that have cancelled coming to Auckland. And the Queen Mary, which is the biggest one in these waters, which only comes maybe every 2 years, can still be berthed here. So games are being played. I have to tell you this. Just like a lot of people in Auckland, the directors of the Ports of Auckland are not happy with Mr. Hawkins either, actually, and you should know that.
Councillor Lee, stop please.
Stop there?
Yep, just for a second. I don't want to stop your oration in full flight. What I am a bit, so I had to give some quite serious thought to, on the basis that we'd have this in the public part of the agenda. And my primary concern was the reputation, whatever your views of those who presently are the chair and the directors on this body. And so I understand you're going to foreshadow this, and actually your recommendation, if that's what it is, isn't specifically, unless there's other parts to it, isn't specifically negative to what has been proposed. So I'm awaiting that. But Councillor Mike, I'd really urge caution on how you comment about the roles of the individuals who are in the Ports Board, okay? Now, you know better than anyone that we've got to be very cautious through this process. It's fair to make comment professionally, but let's just be really, really careful. And secondly, the port directors are not here. And you do not want to speak for the port directors in terms of what they may or may not think about the chair. And so I want you to just keep focused on your specific mood.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I am concerned that this council and members of this council, having made public statements about how strongly they feel about Ports of Auckland's attitude, and there was references to thermonuclear responses and all the rest of it, that this council does not lose face, does not back down, keeps faith with the wishes of the community and the ratepayers. And clearly, without challenge, the overwhelming overwhelming majority of Aucklanders want the Ports of Auckland to stop this work at least until there has been the processes which have been started are completed. Now, yesterday or the day before, there was information on the Herald about us wanting to have a compromise, which I have to say was not helpful to our cause. But we But this council also needs to know then that on the Ports of Auckland side, members of the Ports of Auckland are listening to public concerns. So it's not just this council versus the Ports of Auckland. The Ports of Auckland, most of them, directors are Aucklanders too. And I think this council, therefore, you talked about leadership, needs to maintain a leadership role here. If we go along with Mr Hawkins' compromise, that will not satisfy the expectations of the public. We're not foreclosing any future development. We're not making reclamation prohibited activity under the Resource Management Act. What we are asking for is a due public process and to proceed ahead on much more convincing grounds than the rather spurious information about unbuilt cruise ships going into the second biggest container terminal in New Zealand. And so, Mr Mayor, I have to say that what was being called a two-fingered salute from the Ports of Auckland in the media is not going to be helped by a single wharf at all. And therefore, this council needs to stick to its guns, stick to its rights in terms of expecting a reasonable compliance from a reasonable instruction. And I take on board the article by Justice Ted Thomas in the Herald a few days ago, and he makes the point that every pile that is driven into that wharf will make it harder. It's no point, you know, it's easy for the Ports of Auckland to say, well, pull it all out. Well, who's going to pay for that, really? How responsible is that? Much better for them to desist, and if they don't desist, much better for us to take appropriate action and remove the chairman until they are compliant, until we get through this process. And that is what we agreed on a few weeks ago, and I really urge you to stick to your guns on this one, because it will be damaging to the reputation of this council if we back down, really based on the wishes of a person who may or may not be acting with the support of the majority of those directors.
Okay, so